join me as an excitement, feeling specially privileged, I introduce you to my guests today, to no less than Dr. Natalia Kanem, the Executive Director of UNFPA and Under Secretary General. Dr. Kanem, you're welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kechi. After that introduction, I just don't know what to say.
I've just started. See me
Thank
open
you.
my iPad. For you to get somebody like Dr. Kanem on set, it would be gross injustice not to give her the honor that is hers.
If I'm a rights holder, I'm so much more protected if someone tries to harass me or to sexually assault me, if I know that this is wrong, and at whatever
Absolutely.
age, if I can scream at the top of my lungs and demand for my rights. But you know what? Right now, girls are being told, you be quiet. Girls should be seen and not heard and all this type of foolishness. Girls have a voice. They're actually very smart, and they have a lot to say, and we should do everything in our power to encourage them to speak. And I think there's nothing like bright sunlight and truth to be able to bring that rights holder her rights to her doorstep. And we see the benefits of this. I'm very excited. I'll be meeting your Minister of Finance during my mission, a female. You've had a lot of gender successes here in Nigeria. And of course, our Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, hails from right here. And so I think the time is now, especially with the challenges of girls out of school, COVID, the climate issues. It was Claude Ake who taught me that the African farmer is female. The person you see bent over the hoe is a woman at labor. And we have to do everything to protect her land, to make sure that she can succeed in the market, and also that her reproductive health is looked after. Your health is your wealth. And for women to be exhausted by pregnancy against their choice, those days are still with us in many of our communities.
Sadly. This is something I could go on talking about for several days.
Me too.
But remembering that I said we will cover just a few more sections, I will at this point in time move on to the next one. But I'm sure this important mandate will also be, in a way, be a part of that discussion and say, these needs are there, which you have so eloquently described. There are variations across the world. In Africa, sometimes from where I sit, I feel as if it's most acute. But also it's there in Latin America, it's there in Asia, and so on and so forth. What is it like as the executive director who feels as passionately as you do about this mandate and who every day works to coordinate activities? So how does UNFPA do it? What is the structure? How does the executive director indeed function to deliver effectively?
Well, it's really, to me, still amazing how much UNFPA accomplishes during the course of a week, a month, a year. And as you know, I stand on the shoulders of my predecessor, the late Professor Babatunde Oshotimehin, who I actually had known from the period when we met here in the early 90s.
Yes.
And who rose to lead this very important organization and to build it to the stage where now we're well over $1 billion organization with staff who really, as you said, and having been among them yourself for many years, are not only passionate, but they're skillful and they're knowledgeable. So the excitement that we bring is helping communities figure out how are we going to do something together. And so for me, every single day, we have set measurable goals. I do have a background in epidemiology, and as many have said, if it's not measured and counted, it might as well not happen.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, UNFPA's strategic plan, which is guided by, and we're extremely fortunate to have her, Jenna Keita, who is our Deputy Executive Director for Programs. And she's fashioning a plan.
She was once a rep here, actually, in Nigeria.
There you go. Nigeria is everywhere. You can't get around it. She was our representative here prior to Ulla Muller, who's here now, and really doing fantastic things. So in this era, our goals are clear. Everything we do is based on data, and usually analyzing data, not just in a block, but breaking it down, disaggregating data. What's happening to the disabled person? What's happening to the person who is female? By age, by location, by ethnicity. And also, we look at indices of poverty, because no matter where you go, it is the girl who is disadvantaged who's going to be taken advantage of. And this is morally wrong, but it's also something that holds back development of the entire country. Again, we're back to unfulfilled potential of a young person. So we have 3 zeros, and we are working fervently, and we need partners to do it, which is why I'm so delighted to be back talking with you in terms of building partnerships. The first is to ensure that when we say rights and choices, women's ability to access the contraception of their choice can happen where she wants, how she wants, and with the frequency that's required. And why does UNFPA focus on family planning? Because as a population agency, what we've seen everywhere in the world, and the Asian tiger countries are usually the example that's used, in order for a country to develop, women have to be empowered to choose a smaller family size, which they will if they have the opportunity. And why do women even care about this? It's not even because of the burden on the biology of the human body. Women are selfless, I already said that. Yeah. Women understand to compete in this world, I want my child to have good food. I want my child to be able to get through school. Hopefully secondary school, because secondary school, again, is a real benefit when we do the analysis. Furthermore, women have seen that for affordability, the shoes on the feet, the uniform, being able to do things with the family that are enjoyable rather than just scraping by, hoping that lightning doesn't strike. We have to budget and plan. You know, it's an era now where women everywhere are clamoring for contraception, again, of their choosing, and there's so many methods now. But it's a bit disappointing that in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America predominantly, we have 200 million women who are still waiting for the ability to express that right, to walk into a clinic on their own and say, this is what I want, this is how I want it. So that first zero of meeting the unmet need for contraceptives is expensive. UNFPA is a leader in this field. It's a huge logistical problem because it means whether it's condoms, injectables, whether it's pills, whether it's IUDs, and again, we want to give women a range of choices, and men for that matter, to act responsibly as well. So now the port is affected by the COVID issues. Certainly economies that donate money are affected by so much that's going on in the world today. But we have laid a path to 2030 for the Sustainable Development Goals, where we will meet the unmet need for contraception. And we're trying very hard to do that in Nigeria right now. because of donor issues, we've had a little bit of a setback here. And I'm so pleased that government here is predisposed to help the women of the country to fulfill that part of their destiny. And they will be increasing their partnership with UNFPA
Okay, that's
monetarily
great news.
as
That's
well.
great news.
So this is excellent news. And again, our team in Nigeria, very skilled, great leadership, and moving forward. And this builds on having been in this country for decades and doing so much together with you. Now, on the second zero, after contraception, we are determined that no woman should die while giving birth.
Absolutely.
And Ketchy, you're well aware that the huge proportion of death in childbirth is completely preventable.
Absolutely.
Why was there no transport to bring the woman to the midwife? Why was there no alarm system to refer her to the cesarean section that she needs? And again, I come back to her understanding her own rights. Why do women not know that you should not be in labor for 12 hours, for 24 hours, for 2 days, that you could die and the newborn could die? This is information that we owe to everyone to understand. And certainly, when I say that a woman dies in childbirth, who am I talking about?
The young girl.
Very often I'm talking about a young girl.
Oh.
Yes. So one of the predictable consequences of pregnancy before the age of 18, and you know, you can be married in many countries before the age of 18 and have 2-3 children by the time you're 20. This is a high risk factor for you to die, and what is going to happen to the rest of your children now? What is going to happen to the family that depends on the central element, which typically is the mom? So in a place like Nigeria, I call attention to harmful traditional practices. And there's so many beautiful, wonderful traditional practices, right?
Absolutely.
Those are the ones we should emphasize. And female genital mutilation needs to become a thing of the past by the year 2030. This contributes to death in childbirth as well. And, you know, when it comes to intimate practices, female genital mutilation is practiced in the anticipation of a girl becoming married one day. So the irony is that rather than preparing her for a good marriage, we're really preparing her for a life of pain and risk. So this needs to be better exposed. I think we have to be very protective of the good aspects of our culture. And there are thousands of them. And we need to leave things that are detrimental behind.
Way behind.
Yes. Now, contraception, working to make sure that women can survive. And, you know, we have made some progress. The death rate in childbirth is half now what it would have been 20 years ago. So when you've conquered a problem, the last mile is always the most difficult.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And there are a lot of difficulties speaking about issues, for example, unsafe abortion. There are many women, well, again, girls, who resort to unsafe abortion because of shame and stigma of having sex before marriage. It happens, but it's a taboo. And I think as a sage, and as a midwife, as a doctor myself, as so many of us who care about the fate of a young girl, shame is a killer. And we need to prepare her not to be in that predicament. But when something happens, we also have to react in a way that allows a conversation as to how now do we deal with a situation, rather than leaving her in desperation to do something, like unsafe abortion represents. And for the third zero of ending gender-based violence, you know, we've touched on this already. I'm looking for answers. I think I will hear a lot about that. During my trip, I'll be visiting with Chibok girls, for example, and UNFPA has been very supportive with Ministry of Women, Ministry of Justice, trying to assure that anyone who's kidnapped or anyone who's subjected to sexual and gender-based violence can be healed. Part of the healing is physical, medical. That's actually the easier part because the mental burden can be very high. But a lot of victims have told me that one thing that's very healing is to have justice provided. So we're working very well now with the legal system, with the system of customary laws, with so many other avenues to assure that women will be respected, that the rights of the girl will be always, always protected. I believe that the work that we do in Nigeria, soon to be third most populous country in the world, and not, again, necessarily by choice, because the burden of high explosive population growth, even on infrastructure, in a place that floods, even on, the tragedy that we were so sorry to hear about with the building collapse, et cetera, et cetera. The issues of population dynamics and data is something that UNFPA continues to advise. You have excellent statisticians in this country, and we will be working hand in hand on the census once government takes its decision. I believe we're looking towards 2022. And this will also provide young people with information that they need. Who are we? Where are we? And what are our life prospects so we can fulfill our potential?
And what are the indicators of progress?
Yes.
For
we'll
us,
be looking
the young
for this.
people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Recently, I found out that Nigeria, although I'm now moving ahead of myself to talk about specific, but just to say that Nigeria has the 6th highest incidence of suicides in the world. I don't know how many people realize that. And many of the suicide cases amongst young people, largely. Some women, many women, young girls as well. And it's, in a way, it's a direct indication of this huge problem that exists, whether it's, where they're unable to claim their rights, where the society somehow is not providing enough for them, and where the issues of gender-based violence are actually increasing, sadly.
Well, Dr. Ketchy, it's so important to say, especially for your listeners, that there are always times of worry and despair. And if you are worried about your mental state, you should call a hotline, and this will be provided for you, the number, so that you can talk to a counselor. And it's very beneficial. And as they say, this too shall pass. So I always encourage anyone with thoughts of harming themselves to take advantage of the system that you have in Nigeria to help people who are living through times of doubt. That said, for young people everywhere, COVID has been an additional stress. And it's not fair. Life has not been fair to them in this period. So I think there is a lot that we need to do to assure young people that we will be working with them according to their idea of what it is that they think is going to work. And it's been very exciting to see the imagination of a young person, the innovation, blossom with some encouragement. So I think the opportunity to make your own employment is something that's very much on the minds of a lot of the young people that I talk with.
Yeah.
And so earlier you were talking
that,
about economic empowerment.
Yeah.
It's really smart to figure out how to help people have a good livelihood, a decent job. This is part of the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's one that connects many of the dots in terms of education, livelihood, climate, peace, and social justice. Young people are fantastic agents of peace in society, but there is also a lot of push towards the opposite. So we also need to assure ourselves that young people can fulfill their aspiration to be agents of development, of peace, of community building.
Absolutely. We'll take a short break, and then when we come back, Natalia will deal with the two small sections that are left.
Very well. Thank you, Katie. Good, good, good.
We'll be back. Stay with us. Welcome once again to The Sage, and thank you for having been with us. Oh, it's been absolutely fabulous. We've been talking to Natalia, Dr. Natalia Kanem, let me say it properly, the Executive Director of UNFPA, but who is an old friend of mine. And it's been wonderful, it's been rich, but there's still so much to discuss.
Yeah, I wanted you to say the story of how we met.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. But I want you, before I go into that, to just tell us a little about your experience of Nigeria. I almost consider you a Nigerian.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I'm going to give you a little opportunity to talk a little about your life, your work and life in Nigeria, which continues now, of course, even more importantly as Executive Director. And then we'll move on to that very intriguing last part of the discussion.
Well, thanks, Dr. Kachi. I hail from Panama. Panama is a beautiful country. It has a population of 4 million, in contrast to the 200 million and counting here. And it's the isthmus where the Panama Canal connects the two great oceans, Atlantic and Pacific. In Panama, as a crossroads of the world, we've had people of African descent from the beginning of our existence, and of course the Amerindian indigenous people who are native to those lands. In addition, Europeans and Asians and Arabs and everyone else is in a mix. So it's a very interesting crossroads, much like Nigeria itself, because of your sailing culture and the coastal life that you share in a continuum across the continent. So coming to Nigeria initially as the student of the great Olikoye Ransom Kuti.
Wow.
Was at the time a very exciting prospect of learning about tropical medicine as his medical student. But now, with the gift of hindsight, you realize that the exposure to some of these ideas and principles of primary care, and Prof was a huge champion as a leading pediatrician around the world, but certainly as one of the great fathers of public health here in Africa, of paying attention to the child under the age of 5. And this increased my understanding that I'm a pediatrician myself, if you want the baby to survive, look to the mother. What happened to her early in her childhood is going to follow her throughout the course of her life.
Absolutely.
And affect her pregnancy, her well-being. And now we know so much about the state of the health of the mother's happiness. All of this contributes to happy, healthy baby as well.
And family.
And family. So coming to Nigeria as a medical student in the heyday, booming economy, up until today, everywhere I go, you meet Nigerians who are leading in their field. And that was certainly the case when I was here at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. I also went up to Ibadan, and I was posted in Ogbomoso, in a rural health posting, where as a student doctor, you had these beautiful interactions with simple people who didn't have a lot. They wanted to come back the next day and bring you 2 eggs or a gift from their garden. But they understood this principle of mutuality, of helping each other. And I think also it motivated me to want to do something about the types of preventable conditions that I was seeing as a young doctor. Tuberculosis, which there's an inoculation for, So if the health system is working, Professor Ransom Kuti always stressed primary care to prevent disease before it leads to all of the complications, right? And so these are principles that I've carried with me. But I have to say, to be here in Nigeria as a young person with music, with the textile, with the cultural elements, the pepper in the food, which just flattened me completely.